too smooth, that mud talking to have your ass in a wreck. Who's signing your check? Pussy better do what he says. We shutting down shows. Ain't gotta put no price in your head. Man, I'm coming for your tongue for all that shit that you said.
Gonna make the heat go boom, 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 boom. What it is, I'm gonna tell you exactly what it is. It's another day. So it's Saturday, vato, and I'm not gonna even lie. I'm still hungover from last night's proceedings. The live went in deep, but in a menus on a direct fashion, the grind doesn't stop. Of course, I had to dust myself off and try again. Yes, indeedy, it's time for a profile. And as you can tell by that thumbnail right there, we're profiling an old school homeboy of mine, one Droopy, the Turlock. Now, in order to give this profile, it's just due, it's due process, it's due diligence, it's realness from a real motherfucker. I have to give you a little bit of the history into the city of Turlock. It's a small town located in the Central Valle, in between Merced, or Livingston actually, and Modesto. Okay, it's Stanislaus County. It's real life. They wiggle out there. Turlock has always been with the business. Now, I remember growing up young, I had familia that lived in Turlock. In fact, I have a lot of extended familia that lives in Turlock. But my grandmother lived in Turlock, so I used to go over there every summer and kick back with a lot of the homeboys from Turlock, from West Side Turlock, from Barrio Turlock Norte, VTN, and all that, right? So I became accustomed to the ways of Turlocos. Turlocos were different. Whereas in Merced, we all knew each other. It was all good in the hood. Turlock was more spread out as far as barrios. Most of the barrios were maintained on the west side of Turlock. Grimy, gritty, cucarachas, oh my, right? They were getting their issue on over there, and a whole lot of crate mixed in. Whereas on the different parts of Turlock, it was more whitewashed. You had a lot of gavas that lived over there by the college, Stanislaus State. You had a lot of everybody there. I remember the Yabros were there, right? They were the Assyrians, I think they were. We used to call them the Yabros. They used to say that they were Latin Kings from Chicago. They got shut down pretty quick, but they were thick at one point in time. I remember this as a youngster. I used to go over there and kick it with my tío and all his homeboys that were from, of course, West Side Turlock. And the wiggleization was real. As far as Norte and Sud, I had never seen a Sud establishment. I still never do. When I cruise through Turlock, I don't live too far from Turloco, so when I go over there, I don't really see Sureños out there like that. But I do know that as far as gang banging, Turlock was just a little bit different. They didn't really fight amongst each other. They didn't battle like that. It was more over familia versus familia things. That's just how Turlock always was. It could have changed nowadays, but I don't know. Like I say, it's a small little town located in Stanislaus County, right by Ceres, Modesto. And the wriggle is real. Just like any other city, you go out there, there's going to be vatos that'll smack your dome off. But all the history in Turlock, I will say that there are a lot of OGs that have been in prison, did hold status, did hold weight, but there was never no real gang banging happening in the city of Turlock. These vatos would always get into it with vatos from other cities or go out of town and make their presence felt. That's just that's what I see. So anyways, getting incarcerated in the California Youth Authority, eventually, over time, I met a lot of individuals. And I remember at one point in time, there was a vato from Turlock that was locked up with me, and his name was Garrett Smith, little man from Turlock. I'll never forget him. He was a white boy. He was a legend when it comes to the California Youth Authority because this vato was stabbing everybody. And so I remember getting to know this and meeting the homeboys that were on the linea. But my first tiempo, my first time in the oil, in the box, the caja, I remember him being there already. So he was already there prior to me getting there. I think he had rolled up with the Pedros, K9, Joey Boy and them. And he was maintaining. Of course, he was already stabbing people. He was already into the viciousness. So they already had his ass locked up in the oil. He never hit the linea when I was there. He stood in the hole. And I remember one of the first cells that I ever went into. Now these cells, the makeup of these cells, they were tagged up. There was taggings all on the walls. You couldn't write your name if you wanted to on these walls. There was so much gang graffiti on these walls. This is just the way it stood. This is the way it was. But I remember he had carved a big old 14 and it said little man from Turlock on these walls, probably about 2 inches deep. To what degree of tool he used, I can't call it like an alcoholic, but I will say that stood out to me. The city of Turlock, little man Garrett Smith. Of course, I would meet him. We would go to the day room, shackle it up and chop it up. He was a good, righteous homeboy. I guess he was about putting in that work. Anyways, over the years, or sitting there, probably right, maybe a year before I left, another homeboy rolled up. And this was the homeboy Droopy from Turlock. Okay? And I remember meeting him. He was a kind of tall, skinnier guy, very quiet, very much with the business, very much laced up. I remember he had that old pinto mentality, that prison mentality. He kind of knew what was up more than a lot of us did. He had a lot of tios, he had a lot of familia that were in and out of prison, and they laced him up in the prison ways. Whereas as youngsters, we were like the lords of the flies, vato. So let's get put a pig head on the stick and let's roll, let's rock it. Don't stop it, gotta rock it, don't stop. In a minute, on a direct fashion, we were just getting it however we could get it. We were just trying to stay safe. This vato came with a different type of pinto mentality, more so like, hey, homie, we need to kick back, we need to do this, we need to fucking be in the corner, hold juntas. Now, we were already doing this, but just that mentality let me know that he was a real one, according to the Northern fashion. Okay, so I remember doing my time. Eventually, like I said, I would get transferred to another place, and whatever homeboys were there, we left them behind, you know. I didn't see him. Well, I actually ended up running into this vato in Turlock one day. And I was kicking back with a couple homeboys from Turlock, the homeboy Mikey and the homeboy Potch from Turlock. We're posted up cruising, and we're over there on the west side. And I actually see Droopy. He's mobbing, flamed up. And I'm like, Droops, what's happening? He was like, who is that? I said, Skinner from YA, bro. And he was like, oh, what's up, Carnal, man? What you been into? So we kind of brought each other up to speed on how our lives were going. And his life wasn't going as great as mine. Mine wasn't perfect. By no means necessary was it perfect. But his was just a little bit worse. He was a little bit worse off. He was on the fucking carga. He was not in a perfect situation as far as his old lady, man. You know, he was having turmoil and troubles. But he was still out there toiling in that soiling that he was mobbing. Turlock, you know, he was still true to his roots. He was still banging. He was still active Norteno in good standings. He just was going through the motions. He was going through some bangs, right? So what ended up happening was I remember giving him a ride to go kick it with us. And we ended up wiggling to the town of Atwater. Yes, indeed. I wrote graffiti on the bus. We get to the city of A-Town. And I remember him saying, hey, you could drop me off right here. And I was like, hey, bro, trip out. You might not want to be wiggling. I don't know if you know how Atwater gets down, but there's a lot of sureños out here, man. And if they see you, they're going to know right off the bat you're not one of their camaradas, and they're going to smack your shit. Your glasses are going to get smacked to the back of the fucking bus, right? He was like, nah, it's good. I know a hyena here. I'm just going to chill. And I remember leaving him there. And it was a big case. I remember reading about it and hearing about it. So what ended up happening was he was walking down a street called Determined Street. And so I was for those of you that don't know, and those of you that do, in the city of Atwater, that's a pretty notorious street. The Africanos pretty much dominate the Bloods, Determined Street Bloods, but there's also a lot of sureños that rock right there. So him being in that area, I don't know how that also ended up in that area because I didn't drop him off there, right? He decided to hit the block right there. And what had happened was, I guess that's where the chick lived. So he ends up going to this chick's pad, and we dropped him off on Bellevue. I don't know how. He didn't tell us nothing about this. But he ends up at the chick's pad, and I guess she had been fucking. Her old man at the time was some sureño. So they got into it, okay? The story goes that Droopy was always a tall, bigger kind of guy. Droopy ended up fucking grabbing this individual, allegedly. Droopy's no longer with us, man, so I can speak on it. But he tied this motherfucker up, bro, and tortured this dude for about 48 hours, okay? And I remember hearing about this, and I was thinking, damn, that's the homeboy, man. He's going to do all day and all night. But at the same time, hey, this Vato, man, ran into the wrong person at the wrong place at the wrong time because Droopy was already emotionally unfit. After this Vato was ready to bubble. He was ready to burst when I met him, right? Or when I caught up with him. But I remember that case. So he ends up getting incarcerated. Of course, they stretch him out because he ends up murdering this guy. And he catches all day long and all night, right? And he's locked up. And I end up running into him, man, in Corcoran. In Old Corcoran, man, I ran into the homeboy Droopy. He looked different now. His wit was a little thicker. You know, he looked real light complected like a guy. I remember, as you could tell by that picture, that's an old school flica when we were younger. But he ended up looking, you know, older, more ragged. He was still functioning. He was still with the business. And I told him, well, what happened that night, bro? Give me the backstory because I've always been, I've been searching. The wind's been blowing and I've been waiting for the story for years. And he says, Simon, he says, so this is what happened. You dropped me off. I went and got me a pack of fravos, got me lo pistito, right, lo pisto. And then I was mobbing to this chick's house. He says that he gave the chick a call and she was down like, yeah, kick it. But my old man ain't here right now. If he slides through, you need to jump out the motherfucking back door, right? He was with that. He said he knew deep down inside that if the Vato came, him being an enemiga, him being a Southsider, he was going to make an example. This is what he told me, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. He says, so dude ends up coming. He was there for like about 10 minutes. He's doing the Basham Brothers. He's just getting it in when Vato comes and catches him in the mix. Of course, the Vato goes to snatch him up, and the hombre had a little pico de gallo on him, and so Droopy turns around and hits him. He hits him, dude falls out. He tells the hyena, fucking, you better shut the hell up and make me some eggs, right? So she goes in the kitchen to proceed to make him some jamon con eggs. And he ties this vato up and starts to interrogate him. Hey, where's all your homeboys at? He said he already had gave up. He was losing his old lady. He was all smacked back. He felt like he was a degenerate in the way that he was living, that he wasn't living up to his standards, his higher standards, and his professionalism as being a fucking active, fully functioning soldado or Norteno. So the vato was like at the end of his ropes. Now, we're talking about a vato from Turlock, bro, that had been incarcerated for the majority of his life. Remember, I ran into him in YA, and now I'm running into him in prison. So this vato didn't have much to live for. So he thought. Now, I know being a true soldado for the brown people, you always have something to live for. There's always another day, man. There's always another dollar. You know, you can go out there and get it. The grinding is real, but it's up to you to go out there and do that. So anyways, this was his way of thinking. So he's telling me, he said, fuck it, Holmes. La primera lives. Fuck the world, güero, right? He was going to handle his business. And that was what it was. He ended up tying this guy up, interrogating him, trying to find out where their stronghold was on that street, where the Sureños were, so he can go handle his business. To what degree of handling it? My antennas don't know. I don't know. He had no gun. So he had a little fucking pico. I don't know what he was going to do. But in his mind state, he was going to go out like a G. He was going to handle business. This is just gangbanging 101. This is what was going on in his head. This is how he was laced. I guess if you're going to do it right. You know, you can do it, baby, do it tonight, right? And he was going to do it that night because it was cold that night. Anyways, so the vato in a menudo style ends up carving this vato up a little bit. Says, que, orale, the dog gets belly up. And that was it. So he gets incarcerated, and I remember talking to him. And it was crazy because every time that we met up, it was just like a flash in the pan. It was just for a moment. It wasn't like we did an extensive amount of time and we got to build Carnalismo in a relationship. It's someone that his name has always impacted my life, and I've always thought about the individual because it seems like we were destined to meet each other. I was trying to help him, and he was helping me to help him. You know, he was always that bluebird on my shoulder. Can I kill it? He was always that vato that I ran into that made me realize that some people don't have it as bad as you think, meaning myself. Some people have it worse, right? And he was just a homeboy that I felt a kinship to, I had a friendship with, and I wanted to help. But like I said, we were never in the same place for a long amount of time. It was always a flash in the pan, something quick, couple months, a week here, whatever. So I remember he was on that yarda, and what had happened was Avalto had came from Turlock County. He was actually from the city of Dinuba, and he had spoke on his crime partner. The word on the curb was that he had told on one of his crime partners, and he was an issue, right? So it was going to be a removal in that fashion. At this time, right, I was what they called the squad leader. Okay, now the squad leader is basically the vato who assembles a squad. I know who the squad is. Not everyone knows who the squad is. It was my responsibility to maintain a squad. There was actually 4 squads at this time, but I was to maintain the Red Sox is what we called them. And it was basically comprised of a hitter, 2 bombers, and a retriever. Okay, I'm not going to go into all the details of what that means right now, but let's just say that vatos were going to get fucked up if the squad came at one time for their mentality. And this is what was going to happen. And Droopy actually wanted to be a hitter. Okay, I had him as a bomber. He wanted to be the hitter. Again, I felt like this vato was a kamikaze. I felt like this vato always took the initiative to do the most, right? Why? Because I felt like he was giving up on himself. You know, he was a good, solid individual, man. He just needed help. You know, he had hardly any familia to help him. I don't know his whole background story as far as his familia. Like I said, I know he was born and raised in the city of Turlock, a small town, and his homeboys were his homeboys. You know, he used to tell me about old school homeboys like Big Yo-Yo, Jedi, you know what I mean? Silent, Psycho, Little Man, you know what I mean? Spider. These were old school vatos that I had heard their names and I knew of them. A couple of them are my primos, real talk. Crazy boys. So I knew he knew who was who and what was what, but at the same time, it didn't seem like he had too much people that were in his corner. You know, he didn't have too much relationships out there or people that could guide and help him. So the vato was a monstro, right? And that's what happens. The system turns people into monsters, and Droopy was a monster, and nobody was hearing his cries for help. So I did, but what could I do? I was just a little skinny vato with the Mongolian. So I was just trying to get in where I fit and get the fuck on out, right? Period. So anyways, he wanted to be the hitter, and I remember that day on the yarda, I'm not going to give up too much because I was scared, you know, I don't want to get people caught up. He's no longer here. He overdosed, you know, tragically in 2000. In 2010. But I know this vato fucking proceeded to Bangladesh some vatos down. Let's just say, right? It was ugly that day for that individual. Me, myself, I went back to the building and proceeded to eat a sopa. But I will tell you, it's not a good thing. You know, I'm not trying to glorify it. It happens. It's part of the game. And that Vato took the initiative to be the one on frontline status. I always put himself on frontline status. I'm down to go for whatever. And I used to tell him, hey, bro, it's not that serious, Droops. Let me just do your thing, bro. I always felt a tug in my heart and a pull towards the homeboy. Him being from Turlock, and Merced and Turlock interacted a lot, and me having a lot of family and growing up in Turlock, all my familia, me always going over there in the summers. I felt like he was one of my own, a personal friend, a personal homeboy, like a homeboy from my hood that I knew forever. And us doing time in YA, he was a camarada, he was my brother. I didn't want to see him caught up, but of course he wanted to go down that road. Was it a mental health issue? What was it? I can't call it, but at the same time, what I will tell you in a Norteno fashion, because that's how he proceeded, he was just down for the cause, man. He was a true believer, and he was willing to make the necessary sacrifices, or the ultimate sacrifice for his people. Hey, am I envious of that? In some ways, yes, because when it comes to push and shove, not a lot of people are willing to do that. I myself was willing to make a lot of sacrifices, but at the fucking end of that fucking day, I knew at the same time, man, I had to think before I just jumped in. So that's good. Never went in. I never dived. I always went in feet first. So that's good because I needed to be on my toes. If you know me, you know what I mean? But anyways, Droopy was a real one. Tragically, in 2010, on a yard, I'm not sure which yard, fully functioning and active and with the business. He never flipped. He never went on the other side. He never did that. He left in good standings. He actually indulged in some hard drugs, which of course I was totally against. I'm still totally against, Nortenos using hard drugs, but he chose to indulge. I think it was a way out. I think he was tired of doing time. I think he was just like, fuck it, either that or they hit for some good shit. And so that's okay, he done fucked up. What you and your cellie do in the cell is your business. But he got down and he ended up passing away. And I remember running into one of the homeboys, Crazy Boy out there in Turlock, and he told me, hey, you know about the Droopy? Yeah, he died. And I was like, yeah, that's a good ass homeboy right there. So we started to reminisce and tell stories. And he told me that Droopy actually came from a good family. He doesn't understand why Droopy got caught up like that or why he went that way, because he actually came from a good familia. He actually came from a righteous family with feria. And I was like, well, some people are just like that. It'd be like that sometimes, Maybe he wanted something or needed something that wasn't there at home. So we don't know his business. Anyways, at the end of the day, I just wanted to shine some light on a real soldado, a real Norteño soldado that put it down for his gente and put it down for his people. He went through a lot of the same oppression and sacrifices that I did, man. And Fred Sinellis, he handled his business, man. Again, he hit county jails, man. He went through the struggle, the turmoil, the burpees, oh my, the 22s, everything, and still struggled through it, man. He went on them líneas, man, and got frontline status at all points in times and handled his business, man. Vatos like that are slept on. Vatos that everybody knows about gets all the praise and all the glory, and righteously so. A lot of them deserve that, man. They deserve to be looked at in a certain fashion. But vatos that are unheard of or unspoken of, that are true Norteño soldados, not necessarily in souls and vatos of status, but vatos that are real Norteño soldados, warriors that are part of the puzzle, part of the intricate puzzle to the cause. These are the ones that I want to highlight, and these are the ones that I want to give gratitude and grace for, because if we didn't have vatos like this, so vatos like me would no longer be around here, and there would be not a lot of young Norteños, man, that wouldn't even know what a red paño is, because believe me, the Sureños would have eradicated vatos a long time ago. That's just what it is. Remember, it's not a Norte or Sur thing, it's a brown thing, bro. And our brown people, all our warriors should get the glory for what they've done, regardless if it's right or wrong, and however you feel. At the end of the day, just give love to those who deserve it. The moral to this story is that my homeboy Droopy, rest in peace, my brother, man. It's all love, man, from the ground above. You know what it is, man. We're going to rock till the wheels fall off. With that being said, I hope that you like this spiel, this profile. You can hit that thumbs up. There's a fucking thing right there, a little bell. Tap that one time for your mentality. It's going, please, please, please tap me. If not, you can hit that thumbs down. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to maintain for my people just like you should. We're going to move fast with a purpose, go out there and hustle and bring back what we got to bring back. Remember, at the end of the day, man, don't fucking sleep on people that are crying out for help, man. Help them up. They need that. With that being said, I'm the gun. Bang, bang. I'm eating some menudo because I'm crudo. Bang, bang.